Good morning and welcome to our event. Our event is small in size. We have 6 speakers. It's brief in duration, about 1 hour. But from my point of view, it is extremely rich with ideas, experiences, and emotions. Our theme is care. The noun care, cura, assistenza, but also problemi. The verb to care about, interessarsi, to care for, prendersi cura. Our first speaker is Luca Filippi, terza A classico. In this era of social media, of influencers and followers, what is the role of a role model? Luca?
The Oxford Dictionary, a role model is a person that other people admire and try to follow. Let's do a little survey. How many of you here today have a role model? Raise your hand, don't have any fear. Okay. Most of you has a role model. In fact, a research study conducted at an Indian university states that a role model is crucial in our life because a role model helps us to set up our goals and achieve them. Another important thing that do a role model is that help us to believe in ourselves, find our purpose in life, overcome obstacles, and reach our potential, real potential. I don't know about you, but personally, my role models are my parents. They have taught me all the things important in life, like how live well, respecting others, how behave in all situations. But probably the most important things that my parents have taught me is to believe in myself and that I can do anything if I work really and really hard. These 2 lessons were essential to me and have been a very important part in my education. In fact, now I'm a role model for my little brother. And this experience has made me realize how difficult it is to be a role model. In fact, a role model should be someone who is responsible, self-confident, generous. But I'm human, so sometimes I'm jealous of my brother, sometimes I'm impatient. And if he doesn't understand something right away, I get furious, of course. But thanks to my little brother, now I know for sure that it's really hard to be a good, I repeat, good role model. You should take it really seriously because it's a very important responsibility. But also choosing a role model is extremely difficult and extremely important because it can affect your experiences and sometimes your whole life. So I think that a role model should be a person that inspires you, who is responsible, who really cares about you. And I'm sure that you will find the right one if you use these 3 simple criteria. But we spend a lot of time choosing what smartphone to buy, or what clothes to wear, or what to do in our free time. But come on, I think you should spend at least the same time or more when you are choosing a role model, because it's one of the most important choices you will ever make. Thank you.
Stress. Stress is a natural physiological response to change or a challenge. Low levels of stress periodically are okay, but when your stress level begins to rise, you need to take action to manage it. Annalisa Albero, seconda B classica, will talk about stress and school-related anxiety. Annalisa?
How would you rate your well-being in this school year? Let's do a survey. Raise your hand if you rate it as bad. Raise your hand instead if you rate it as good. And finally, raise your hand if you rate it as excellent. So the majority think it was good. Well, if I think about my last year, I would probably rate it as terrible. I was always stressed out, nervous, and I always thought about all the things that I had to do. For example, I started counting all the pages of history that I had to study. And finally I said something just like, "Oh my God, I hate this subject." I know that if you don't like history or any other subject, you know how it feels like. But last summer I started thinking why I felt so bad. And it was because of school, obviously, but especially because of my expectations and other expectations. So I tried to find some strategies to deal with my anxiety, and I'd like to share them with you. First of all, before an interrogation or speaking up in a class, take a deep breath, and during it, try to enunciate the words. People will understand you better, and you will be more convincing. Or you should also focus on a friend. Their affection can give you the confidence to continue. Well, we all agree that when you're studying but you're stressed out, your mind is full of negative thoughts, you will do things poorly. So when you're studying, try to take short breaks. For example, having an herbal tea, or if you don't like them, just like me, try to keep time with hot chocolate. Before an interrogation, a special event, or a test, try to talk to your friends. I always do it, and I distract myself. We talk about silly topics, for example, what we did, what we said the day before, and I think it's helpful. Some people, to relax, like to doodle or draw. Some other people like to play with a paperclip or a rubber band. But the best suggestion I can give you is to stay outdoors listening to music. When I listen to music, I forget about all my problems, and it's really helpful for me. It's just music and me, nothing else. If you want to learn more about anxiety, especially post-lockdown and in teenagers, you can consult Pavia University website, but also Milan University website. Finally, I had to say that I'm not a doctor, so these are not medical suggestions. But if you need help, consider consulting a psychologist. For example, the school psychologist. I hope my suggestion can help you. Because remember, your education is important, but also your well-being. Thank you.
Life, my life, your life, life is full of choices. Left, right, on, off, stop, go. Andrea Puglia, terza F scientifico, will talk about life as a series of choices. Andrea?
I read a lot. I loved fantasy. And one of the things that most interested me was that some characters could go back in time and change some events or actions for the better. Now, this was a fictional world, so it always worked perfectly. Growing up, this idea stuck in my mind, and sometimes I ask myself if I would like to change what I've done, to go back and choose something different. And this not because I'm not proud or sure of what I've done, but simply because I really would like to see the other face of the coin, to put myself in someone else's shoes and be able to better evaluate my life. Being able to time travel, you would have a lot of possibility to get more choices, and this would be perfect, I think. Every time you make a choice, you're adding a little brick to yourself, an experience, a part of your life that builds you. And it's important to be aware of this, because who you are is the sum of your actions through the years. And in the future, you're likely to act as you did in the past. But every time you make a choice, you're also throwing away a little brick that you can't have because you haven't chosen that road. Being able to time travel though means you can have both the bricks. And this seems like I said, an opportunity to have a perfect life. But there would come a huge problem. You wouldn't learn how to face your problems caused by your mistakes. Every time you do something you think it's wrong and you don't like the consequences, you stop doing it and try to find another way. You learn from your mistakes, like every other species on Earth. Being able to time travel, you wouldn't have any interest in learning from your mistakes. Because if you do something that you don't like the consequences, you go back and do it different. There would be no motivation to learn from your errors. You wouldn't have any fear to make any bad choices or something like that. Now, some scientific studies demonstrated that every time you choose something, you have a little feedback from your brain that says that's good, that's not good. But this is really important because the fear of making bad choices, the thrill of exploring a road on another, is what keeps us alive. Without it, life would be dull, uninteresting, and you would have no motivation to focus on your choices and learn from your mistakes, because you would just go back and do it differently. So, the fear of mistakes is the base of life. We are our mistakes. Without them, we would be nothing without a simple choice, go back, choice. The fear of making mistakes keeps us alive. How do you define a mistake? Every time you choose something, you go down a road or another. It leads to something. There's something. So how do you define a mistake? Technically, a mistake in math leads to a wrong answer, and that's it. It's right or wrong. But in life, how can you define something bad? Time travel would remove totally any fear of making bad choices, and that's what keeps us alive. So don't dream to travel back in time. Thank you.
Home, sweet home. Home is where the heart is. Yolanda Sudano, Seconda B Classico, will talk about home and family and the importance of having of your relationships at home.
3 years ago, when I was 12, I acted really differently. I didn't care much about what my parents said. I wouldn't listen to them because I felt that they could understand me. I remember that I was more stressed. And if I'm brutally honest, I was a little rude. Anyway, from my perspective, my parents were like enemies. I would hide my life, my feelings, and even my little problems to them. The general environment at home was toxic, because we didn't talk, we just argued. I would also apologize for everything I did without actually feeling guilty. There were times when I kept saying, I'm sorry, I will do that again, but then I wouldn't. I didn't care about their advice because I took them as a criticism. And I would also compare them to other parents by saying, her parents really love her, or his parents let him do whatever he wants. And you don't. What an original way to give suggestions, isn't it? I didn't understand them because I didn't want to. Slowly though, I realized that my relationship with my parents was affecting me and my life. I needed to change. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and maybe I just grew up. I spent a lot of time listening to them, and I learned a lot of things about them. And one of those things is that they are humans. So as humans, they want support, and they have insecurities. And one of those insecurities is their role as parents. Basically, they want to show us their best sides, not the vulnerable ones. I also started to talk about my problems. So that's what I did to help them and to support them. But what could I do to help them in a practical way? I started doing housework and organizing my own schedule. I remind them what to do because most of the time they're busy, so they often forget. I'm more reliable now than them. So my changed behavior made my parents change too. I listen to them more, so they listen to me too. They consider me an adult, so they care about my thoughts, opinions, and ideas. Our life is easier, and we are much happier. So the question is, why is it important to have a high-quality relationship with your parents? First, you can find out new things about them. You can discover that they're not so different from you because you listen to them and listen to their stories. The second one is that you have someone else you can rely on. And they have one too. And the last one, the most important one, is that the general environment at home is much healthier. Thank you.
You're surrounded by your classmates, teachers, school staff. This is your school. This is where you belong, at least for these 5 years. Giulia Di Pasquale, terza A classico, will discuss belonging.
Belonging is a fundamental human need. We need to have a place or a community where we feel comfortable. As John Donne wrote in 1624, no man is an island. There's a lot of scientific research on the importance of belonging, including its positive impact on your health and your well-being. Belonging is important because it helps you to build an identity and to feel like you're part of something bigger than you. It gives you a social and an emotional support network to face life's challenges, and it can give your life a purpose and a meaning. When I started high school, I've been skating for 9 years. My friendship and my free time were totally connected to this activity. I can say that skating was my whole life. But after 2 months of high school, I realized that I couldn't both keep up on my schoolwork and continue skating, so I gave up. But now a big part of my life was gone. I felt lonely, I was bored, and I had no goals. During the summer, after my first year of school, I met a person who was actively involved in a political party. Speaking to him, I learned a lot of things and I became interested. When the government fell last summer, I suddenly realized that the things that were going to happen would affect my present and my future. For example, the consequences of the war in Ukraine. At that moment, I discovered what I call my place, the place where I felt I belonged. This place helped me to build social relationship. For example, I learned how to select people I like to spend time with. It helped me to build my self-confidence. I was an active part of a group of people whose ideas and values I shared. And above all, belonging to this group of people gave me a reason to put all my efforts in school. Politics gave back to me everything that skating had given me and that I had lost when I quit. Politics was my new place. You can find your place in anywhere. Sports, religion, music, art, school. I happen to find it in politics, but the important thing is to find that place or that community where you feel you belong. As Spinoza said, being who we are and becoming what we are capable of becoming is the only purpose in our life. Thank you.
Are you all comfortable?
Yes.
Comfortable?
Yes.
Are you happy?
Yes.
Dear Francis Rucci of the Quinta C Scientifica will talk about why being comfortable and sometimes being uncomfortable can be positive. Francis?
So, comfort zone. What is comfort zone? Well, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's a psychological state in which a person feels at ease because they're not being tested and they won't typically engage in new experiences or take on new challenges. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think that comfort zone is what stops us from unleashing our true potential as individuals. So now the real question is, how do we get out of our comfort zone? Unfortunately, there's no universal answer, but I think that one step in the right direction might be to look into one's personal history from their childhood to their current age to try to understand why it might be difficult for them to come out of their comfort zone. Personally, I've always been a very shy person, and I found it difficult to come out of my comfort zone. But in life, I've encountered situations that required me to come out of it. For example, when I was 8 years old, I had to leave my home country, Nigeria, to come here to Italy because my dad left when I was 3 months old, and he came here to secure a better life and education for us as a family, and for me and my siblings. And coming from an African household, education is quite important because it's one of the few things that can assure a better life for you in the future. In fact, my mom would always tell me, "Oh Francis, if I had your opportunities, the sky would be my limit." So my dad came here in order to secure a better life in general for us as a family. Because of his decision, I was launched into this new reality where I had to come face to face with three main challenges. First of all, the language barrier, which seemed insurmountable at the time. Second of all, the cultural differences, from the way of greeting with the two classic kisses on the cheeks, which seemed weird to me at first, and the variety of food, especially pasta. And third of all, making new friends was quite difficult at first because I wanted to belong, of course. I wanted to look like my peers, I wanted to speak like them, I wanted to live like them, I wanted to be like them. But because we all know the kind of stereotypes that people attribute to African countries, so I did not want to be known as the African girl who barely knew the language, because I wanted people to acknowledge me for me. And I knew that in order to achieve that, I had to come out of my comfort zone because I was tired of feeling left out when it came to group activities or birthday parties that I was often not invited to. I was tired of not being able to understand the language properly and having to rely on someone 24/7 made me feel like a burden, and I think none of us here wants to ever feel like a burden. But the problem is that I was so focused on fitting in that I was willing to give up the only friend that I had made, the only true friend I had made, because maybe the other children didn't want to be friends with her, they would purposefully ignore her. So I had like an ambivalent behavior with her. Sometimes I would be friends with her, but when other people would come to our group circle, I would stop talking to her, I would ignore her. What I'm trying to say is that stepping out of your comfort zone should never compromise your identity, because my ambivalent behavior towards her made me feel very uncomfortable. I think being your authentic self along the way is one of the most important things, because it's the only thing that separates you from others. That said, of course, stepping out of your comfort zone will not always guarantee 100% success. I think there are two main things to take into account. First of all, failure is to be considered, because when I think about my ambivalent behavior towards my friend, it definitely hurts me, but I have two options. I could either keep dwelling on the past, or I can move forward and vow to not repeat such behavior in the future. And second of all, I think patience is absolutely key, because every good thing comes at its own time. So now you might be asking yourselves why you should come out of your comfort zone. Well, I can give you three main reasons. First of all, you get to enrich yourselves with new experiences. Second of all, you might get to discover your true potential as an individual, and you can push yourself when it comes to tough situations. And third of all, you will have absolutely no regrets in the future, even if things don't go as planned. Thank you.
Our emotions, our experiences, our ideas. I thank you all very much for all the work, the commitment, the effort, and I thank you all for coming today. Have a nice day.